Hello, this is Yarrow Stark, and welcome to an Entrepreneur's Journey interview. And today on the line, I have a new guest, someone I have actually spoken to prior, but you probably haven't heard of him because that was for one of my paid products. His name is Pete Williams, and he is in Melbourne, Australia, so just down from me here in Brisbane. And I've known Pete for a while. I think we first connected Pete at probably an Ed Dale event.
Yep,
Would that
probably
make
would have been
sense?
Ed's event. Yeah, probably a few years ago now.
Pete's one of those guys who he has a claim to fame where you often come in contact with him first hearing the story about how he, in quotes, sold the MCG, which is the Melbourne Cricket Ground. So it's a big cricket field down in Melbourne. Now, that's not all that Pete's about, though. And as I've discovered, every time I talk to him, there is always a ridiculous amount of businesses going on. And he's only one man. So the fact that he can manage them all, obviously he's got teams and a company. Pete, just as a summary, I know you've got a telco last time I was speaking to you, right?
Yes. So I guess the main business out of everything is the telco, Infinity Telecommunications. So we've got teams up and down the East Coast in the 3 states around Australia selling and installing phone systems for SMEs. And then we've got a whole bunch of e-com sites under that are doing millions of dollars a year in e-commerce around sort of B2B headsets and conference phones and other sort of telecommunications peripherals. Also involved in an outdoor retail store, a finger food catering company, and then just do a whole bunch of other consulting and sort of some more advising sort of stuff to some other sort of businesses. But the ones I actually kind of have a share in is the telco, its related online businesses, and then the online and offline elements of a finger food catering company and outdoor retail store. So very, very completely different businesses. But as you might touch, I don't know if we'll get to it in the call today, to me they're all the same, which I'll kind of explain later if it fits.
And, of course, we haven't even mentioned that we're coming together now a little bit because we want to talk about something you're doing with Richard Sheffrin, who's been a long-time mentor of me. And we can talk about that later in the call, but that's an information product, a training course for online marketers. So, and you've taught how to get press coverage before as well, not to mention, I think, SEO, marketing in general. You do too many different things, Pete, so it's not natural. But I think we'll learn about how you actually can make all this work by interviewing you. So let's get this full story. And thank you for joining me today.
Oh, mate, happy to. More than welcome. I loved your blog. Yours was one of the first internet marketing blogs I read years ago. So loving to actually be on here and sharing some stuff back to everybody.
Fantastic. So born and raised in Melbourne?
Born and raised in Melbourne, yeah. A place called Bacchus Marsh, which is sort of, I guess, on the outskirts of the city limits. Almost, you probably call it a bit country. So, and then, born and raised in Victoria. Love it down here.
Now, did you have like a lemonade stand or some sort of early entrepreneur gig as a kid?
It's really strange. My mum's a maths teacher and my dad's a logistics manager, so they're not sort of business people by any fact. But mum loves telling this story. She's very proud of it, and I don't really know why. But when I was about 3 or 4 years old, apparently I drew in crayon arrows all down our hallway to my bedroom. And when mum, before she scolded me for doing that, she asked me what I was doing. And I told her, apparently, I don't remember this, of course, but apparently I told her that I was doing arrows to my office so she can find me if I was busy. So it's kind of, for whatever weird reason, always been sort of part of me, and never quite had the lemonade stand, but we used to holiday quite a bit down at Ocean Grove, which is like a surfside beach town here in Victoria, every sort of Easter and Christmas. And I've got photos and do have a very vivid memory of making sort of having basketball card trading sort of days at our place and in the caravan park, sort of running various sort of little entrepreneurial ventures. Made a series of gift cards, one at Easter, so people could buy Easter cards off me and give to their friends and family in the caravan park, and did some very sort of random sort of lemonade stand type things when I was younger, and kind of have always been that way since.
So does that mean as you graduated from high school, you were not thinking full-time job, or did you go university, or did you go straight into running your own business?
No, I actually started my first business when I was in high school. In year 11, I started a business called Impact Plus, which was a web design company. So I think I had about 5 clients, my primary school, local basketball club, and a couple of other small businesses around town. So that was the first business I actually registered, was when I was in year 11.
So you were a code monkey? Like you could design pages yourself?
Oh, look, front page, Microsoft front page. So I wouldn't call it a code monkey. Back in the day, HTML was pretty bland. It was like, frame sets and tables. It was pretty basic, but yeah.
When was this, by the way? What year?
97, 98, 99 it would have been. Okay, that sort of late 90s.
Exactly when I came online. And I learned tables in HTML as well. So yeah, it was a good era. I enjoyed the simplicity back then. Okay, so
It was great fun. So then did that, and then so went to uni at so finished up high school, thinking I'd always be a business owner, but kind of made the assumption that to learn how to run a business I had to go to uni. So I went to a uni down in Geelong at Deakin, doing a commerce degree down there, and very early learnt that uni's a lot of fun and definitely going to stay there and graduate for the enjoyment of uni, but the course itself was very much geared to be a white-collar employee for a big corporate. So it was a business course, but it was very much like you didn't really learn any direct response stuff or any sort of stuff that's applicable straight away, which I kind of was surprised about. I was very naive going into the course thinking that commerce meant learning how to run and grow a business as opposed to being a good employee in a business sort of firm. Which is kind of interesting now because I've just been asked to be on the advisory board for the Commerce Department of Deakin University. So I'm now actually helping advise and change some of the syllabus so it can actually better match what I think the course needs to a certain extent.
The irony, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So it's kind of full circle, which is really cool. So I'm really enjoying giving back in that way. But kind of got a job out of uni. So actually didn't quite get a job. Went to did uni, worked at Athlete's Foot selling shoes just to pay the bills at uni, and kind of had some small projects on the side, but really enjoyed that, learned how to sell, which was really important, and then finished university and had the ability to go and work overseas for a few months, work in the US. So the original plan was to go to the US and spend 6 months working with Athlete's Foot at various stores around the country over there to work out what they were doing in America, different to Australia, bit of a reconnaissance mission, so to speak. And that was going to be great fun, travel to America on Athlete's Foot dime and kind of, see the States and have fun before I came back to Australia and got serious. But I started off in Florida because I moved over there in December, university finished in November and moved over there in December and was like, well, it's America's winter. I don't want to be anywhere near the cold. I was a surf boy. I was a beach boy. So I went to Florida to start with and thought I'll start with Florida and as it gets warmer, I'll kind of move across the country. And then basically just fell in love with Florida and went, do you know what? I'm not going to leave here. So basically stayed at the one store for the majority of the time. Met a girl, fell in love, lived on her couch for a while. Had great fun. And then my visa ran out and kind of got sent back to Australia. And was kind of planning on, the plan was to move back to America, work out some way I could move back there and, do the relationship thing. And it was at that time when the whole MCG venture kind of happened, which you kind of alluded to earlier. We won't go too in-depth with it, but basically the plan was obviously to go back to the States. So I took up another job at Athlete's Foot just as an interim sort of thing to help them grow a new store that just opened while I was trying to get my stuff together to move back to the US. And it was a relatively new store, so it was pretty quiet. So there was times where it was no foot traffic coming into the store and stuff like that. So I'd stand behind the counter and just read books just to kind of kill the time and fuel and feed that entrepreneurial kind of fire inside me. So one of the books was The 1 Minute Millionaire by Mark Victor Hansen and Robert Allen. And it told a story in that book about a gentleman who later became, I know as Paul Hartunian, who's a great marketer and publicist, who back in the late 80s, early 90s, bought a whole bunch of timber that was the Brooklyn Bridge walkway in Manhattan, New Jersey. The bridge that went between those two places, and made certificates up with the history of the Brooklyn Bridge, little sort of, A5 size certificates, history of the Brooklyn Bridge, a 1-inch square of the timber, and then, word around the campfire was that he sold them off for about $19 each and made about $2 million out of it. And I was just like, wow. Almost swore there. Wow. How good is that? So I started to think, well, how can I easily replicate that as a quick little venture to make some money? That was kind of what I always had done. And the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which for those who don't know is kind of Australia's version of Yankee Stadium. It's kind of the stadium here, a sports stadium here in Australia. It was under renovation for a rebuild it was doing in certain parts of the stadium. So rang the wrecking company or was able to track down the wrecking company that was doing the demolition, thinking they'd just replicate that idea and do certificates up with the timber and things like that. But speaking to them, they had a whole bunch of carpet. Now, it's going to sound really strange, but the carpet that lay in the members area, the really exclusive members area of the stand, was and has the crested logo of the ground on it. So it's quite famous. Very, very ugly, but very, very famous. And they had some of that sitting there in the back of the warehouse because they'd pulled it down as part of the demolition. So I bought all that over the phone straight away. And then, to make a long story short, wrote a press release saying 21-year-old sells the MCG for under $500 because I'd made a series of memorabilia frames up with a photo of the MCG, a piece of this squared carpet, and a limited edition plaque with a bit of a history of the MCG. And the media here in Australia went absolutely ballistic with it. So I got news stories and national press and radio and all that sort of stuff. And that was a great little journey that was very profitable. I got a book deal out of it, got approached by John Wiley and Sons, one of the larger publishers in the world. So I got to turn that into a book deal and then started doing consulting work. And that's kind of how it sort of parlayed into all these other businesses, which we can definitely touch on as well.
Amazing, because it sounds like before that, you pretty much were in retail selling shoes.
Yeah.
So it's like one smart idea that really propelled you into the limelight.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think because the retail for me was like I didn't own the retail stores or anything like that. It was just more of a job that I kind of enjoyed. I'm a triathlete, so I kind of like running and stuff like that. So the shoe kind of stuff was something that I enjoyed. And the thing I loved about Athlete's Foot from an entrepreneurial perspective, because I've kind of always been that way as we touched on, was they're very much on sales and selling skills. So it's not just about it's a retail store. They really spend a lot of time training their staff, which is what I really liked about it because I learned some really, really important lessons about selling and stuff like that. And I was good friends with the owners of a number of franchises that I worked at. So they kind of gave me a lot more responsibility than simply just, selling and taking money over the counter and playing with people's dirty socks. It was very much more about beyond just that, learning the business as well, which was kind of interesting. So that was really helpful. But yeah, like that before the MCG venture, it was very much just retail, planning on going back to the US. So
did the MCG venture give you enough money to then say, I'm an entrepreneur, and you quit the job? Like, how did your life change?
Yeah, well, basically from that, I started doing some consulting work with some companies and stuff. There was sort of a role that I took where I was sort of dealing with a whole bunch of companies around Australia, sort of doing consulting to help them grow their business and marketing. And then from that, kind of parlay into some speaking gigs and more advising and consulting stuff. So
Pete, you got to explain though, how did you become a consultant when really you prior to you hadn't run businesses,
it was interesting.
You hadn't done much marketing, you had a bit of success with the press coverage. Is that what they hired you for, to sort of get press for their companies?
It was the press and the marketing stuff, because obviously with the MCG venture there was more than just the press. Like the press was the big catalyst, there's no question about that drove a lot of the sales, but we did a lot of direct response stuff as well. And I did a whole bunch of other sort of various online marketing for the frames and stuff like that. So, and look, I've been completely open about this the whole way through. I do think people asking for me for advice at the time was a little naive of them more so than me, in that they were sort of seeing this one venture and thinking I had all this experience. And I was very transparent about it. I never sort of said that I knew it all. But, I think what it really was the book. When John Wiley approached me to do a book about sort of how I did the business and the project and other sort of stuff I've been involved with, that was very, very cool. So that kind of helped get a lot of credibility. So I'd started doing some marketing consulting kind of at the end of the MCG venture anyway, just because I was sick of doing the retail stuff. And it was something I just kind of fell into, in terms of there was a company that I knew about, that I was friends with, that again said, do you want to come in and help just do some marketing work for us? So, you probably call it more of an employee role, but I was paid as a consultant and, positioned myself as a consultant purely because I was still planning on going back to the US. So the consultant was sort of more the term purely because I didn't want to have a job because I was going to leave at some stage back to the US. Now that obviously fell apart. The relationship kind of, fell apart over years of, or a couple of years of, me staying in Australia with the MCG venture and stuff like that, not wanting to leave because it was profitable. So from that, started with the telco guys. That sort of happened kind of at the end of the MCG venture, at the start of the book deal. So that was kind of where I fell into that role. Like I came in and helped them do some marketing in a certain sort of way. They were dealing with some press and some direct response stuff. That was a consulting role for a short period of time. And then how that parlayed into the telco was that they were in the telco space reselling phone lines. So they were actually just sort of rebilling other people's carriage, so helping you save money on your phone lines. So I kind of came in helping with that to start with, and then realised that there's no real space online for doing that well. But we realised that there wasn't anyone in Australia, this is about 8 years ago, doing online marketing for phone system sales anywhere. It was a very, very untapped market, and they had some resources and some connections in that space. So the way we started that telco business was where I became a partner when we changed the focus from phone bills to hardware, is we started the business and we still consider it a sales and marketing company. And what we did is we put in place processes of websites and traffic generation and conversion engines and a whole bunch of other stuff designed to actually drive inquiries for phone system sales. So we get that traffic engine right to be able to drive the inquiry. Then we'd make the sale of the phone system to the client. We had relationships with hardware manufacturers, relatively easy. And then what we'd actually do is we'd actually outsource the installation of the phone system to our competitors. So we'd sell a system in Sydney, hypothetically. We're all based in Melbourne, or were at the time. And we'd sell a system in Sydney because our website would generate a lead from Sydney, and we'd be able to do a proposal and price it well and all that sort of stuff. And then we'd find a company in Sydney locally that could go and do the install for us. So technically it's a competitor. So we made sure we had our sales and marketing engine right and outsourced all the installation. So, the first 100 or so installations of phone systems we did, we actually fundamentally passed that client onto a competitor after the fact. So we made a gross margin on the front end and had no lifetime value and we were very conscious about that. And that was our big decision, because we wanted to make sure we could get the business engine running. And to me, any engine is traffic and conversion. The product itself has to be great, has to be good, but is it very much a third consideration, whereas for so many business owners, I think it's the main focus. So that's how we started that business, is we were just doing sales and marketing all over the phone from warm leads we generated from direct response marketing and online marketing. And that's over time, that business grew where we were making enough sales, in Melbourne and in Sydney, that it was silly of us not to get our own technicians. So it was only after sort of a point of, reach and size that we went, okay, let's actually start doing the product side of things in-house. That's how we end up having, our own staff in terms of hardware suppliers and technicians, and then offices in Sydney and Brisbane.
There's a lot to this. Like you said, you're doing a lead generation business to begin with online. So that I can see you could keep reasonably small without getting, you have a bunch of websites, you get emails and phone calls, or you send emails and do phone calls.
Exactly.
And when you get converted customers, you send them off, and hopefully there's a margin you can make between that transaction. Yep. Now, that's a big difference, though, from then becoming basically a service and hardware business.
Huge difference.
Right? So how did you manage, were you just a one-person or two-person show when you were just doing lead generation?
Initially, there was 4 of us. I've got 2 business partners in the telco who I started consulting with, and they had one employee at the time. So they had a team of 3 when I came on, helping them with the phone bill stuff. So then I kind of joined, so it was a team of 4 of us. So for the first few months, it was only 4 of us because I was taking care of most of the marketing, like online sort of stuff, and then they were basically handling all of the sales calls and doing the sales stuff.
So you were building websites, Pete? Is that?
Yeah, I was building some of the websites, and we outsourced it, and I was looking after sort of the management of the site and the copy and the AdWords, because there was a lot of AdWords sort of stuff in the SEO. So I was kind of doing most of that sort of stuff. Still a bit of sales, but predominantly worrying about the traffic and the lead gen stuff. And the 2 business partners who are still amazing salespeople were handling the inquiries once they came in and doing the conversion side of things.
You must have been very good at direct response copywriting, or were you farming that out?
No, I was doing that myself. But again, this is the thing is, I think over time I've got much better at it. I think Adam, one of my business partners, is an exceptional salesperson. And as we all know, direct response is just salesman in print. So I just basically take stuff he was saying and sort of write it up, or he'd write it up himself and put it on the site. But again, the really cool thing is that, at the time, there was no one really doing much online in the telco space. It was quite surprising. 8 years ago is an ancient history online, but it was very open at the time. So we were just doing AdWords, and, there wasn't many competitors out there. So what was happening was, the boss or the office manager was saying to the receptionist or someone else in the team, hey, go and get me some quotes for a phone system. So, they were at their work, they were young, they were, mid-20s, late 20s at the time. So they're going to go to Google. That's what they were doing when they were told to get quotes. They weren't going to Yellow Pages at the time and stuff like that. So we were kind of, fundamentally, right place, right time, and doing good stuff. We still make sure that the beautiful thing is in the phone system hardware space, and it still is to this day to a certain extent, that the majority of our competitors are technicians. And not saying one-man band technicians, but technicians to the extent that they think it's about the product. So they talk tech, and they talk about ISDNs and 4-port routers and just all this sort of technical garbage that just scares the heck out of the client. Whereas because we were sales and marketing people who happened to sell phone systems, we only knew enough about phone systems of what it would do. We knew the features and the benefits, not the technical stuff. So we never got bogged down in communicating to the client what the actual cards were, that you're getting a 4-port on-ramp or anything like that, because it meant nothing to them. So we were very, smart or lucky, depending on how you want to look at it, that we deliberately didn't get technical. So when we spoke to the clients, and what we continue to hear over and over again and still do today, is that what we communicate to them is in English. We don't talk tech. So it was more about that was the real thing for us, is that we didn't get bombarded. We spoke in the language of our clients, because that's the language we knew, which was really, really great. And that was sort of the real killer, is that, the copy, we were driving traffic from AdWords very, very, very well, better than anybody else. And not many people were doing it, but those who were still, killing it from that perspective. And then when they got onto the site or called us for a conversation about a quote, we were using language they cared about. We were talking about the benefits. We were talking about, we were using long form copy on, phone system sales pages, and not sort of the long side copy then, my phone system wouldn't work, or my friends laughed at me when I told them I could sit down and my phone would ring off the hook, or, those silly direct response headlines that everyone's heard. We weren't using that sort of style direct response. We were just using long form copy, really talking to people in their language and talking about the benefits and the problems they were experiencing with their phone system, and really understanding what they wanted without being technical. And that I think that's still the case with anything.
Yep. Sales is such an important skill. It's amazing. No matter what industry you're in, that seems to be the deal breaker.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us how you expanded to a full-blown hardware company as well, and how did you manage this with your, because did this make you rich, Pete? Was this like or by then were you kind of living off your Melbourne MCG sales?
The businesses were profitable. They're all going really well, and I was living a great life, and just still sort of wanting to make more, and wanted to continue to sort of fuel that entrepreneurial fire. But let me tell you, that was like the actual growing from a sales and marketing company to having technicians on the books was a nightmare, because it's not our skill set. I still don't know how to install a phone system after 8 years. So, and it still is a little bit of a challenge to a certain extent, because it's not our focus. But with any business, if you're a business that is focused on technical, you're going to have problems with sales and marketing. It's hard to sort of have the best balance until you hire staff. So, we weren't too bad. Because we grew organically, we kind of, said, okay, well, we'll just start having technicians in Melbourne. So we'd still outsource our installations interstate to our competitors, but we just, we went, okay, let's start with technician in Melbourne. So we hired one technician to sort of do some of our work in Melbourne, and then slowly over time kind of just grew it that way. But there was definitely a lot of, growing pains, because, we were sales and marketing, and we, right or wrongly, focus majority on sales and marketing. And I do, and I've apologized to many clients where we didn't give them the service they probably deserved at the time, because we didn't have the technical resources or whatever reason, or more so the processes in place to handle that sort of stuff. So there was teething issues with every business. And, I think someone to come on and say that, they grew their business and never had never stuffed a client around, never upset a client, never did a poor installation or a poor service is kidding themselves. Every business goes through growing pains where you don't do what you hope you do, where you don't do what you hope you're doing for your clients. So we did have growing pains, and clients, didn't have the perfect experience. But I think over time we've got better at that, and we've put employees in place who are technical, who can manage that, so I don't have to. That allows for us to give the delivery of, the product delivery is the level that I want it to be at, but still only spending most of my time focused on sales and marketing.
In hindsight, though, do you think, because I'm all about lifestyle businesses, and you've obviously made a choice there to take what was basically a purely online business and make it physical, which absolutely. I'm sure you're working a lot of hours already, but you no doubt would have worked a lot more hours when you went physical. So do you kind of, like, if you were to advise Pete Williams back then, would you sort of suggest maybe you had a good situation and let's maybe continue to look at more online ventures, or have you
Yeah, great. That's an exceptionally good question, mate. That's an exceptionally good question. I think, for me at the time, I was in my sort of mid-20s. Half the reason we did it for was obviously to make a bigger business, but also I just wanted to experience what it was like to grow a real world business. So, because I'd had money and I was kind of relatively successful, quote unquote, it wasn't necessarily about the money for me. It was about the challenge of, like, let's see if we can do this. So I think if I did it now, like my wife's pregnant, we're due with our first child in January, I probably wouldn't do that again right now, because my life right now is it's all about lifestyle. It's very much about that. It's not about challenges per se, because I think a baby's going to be a big enough challenge.
Yeah.
But in my mid-20s at the time, I was like, let's have a crack at this. Like, because lifestyle wasn't a huge issue for me back then, because I was able to go out and have fun on the weekends and all that sort of stuff anyway. So I think, for someone in their 20s, I'd say have a crack at it, because you could build something, exceptionally large that you can IPO or do something like that. But I think if you sort of depending on where you are in your life, your goals change. So back then my goal was to try and take over the world. Right now it is changing. It's all about, okay, look, I want to have time with my child when it comes along. I want to be able to sort of do other stuff. I really enjoy my consulting and, writing a new book soon. And that's the sort of stuff I want to do now. So I think it comes down to being what sort of business you want and what your goals are. Because I think realistically, if the whole economy changed and everyone just wanted to have passive, income lifestyles, the economy is going to stop because there's no one, no one's going to go and do your sparky work or your plumbing.
Someone's going to do the jobs.
Yeah, someone has to do it. So there's always going to be a need for that. So I think it just comes down to right style, life, right goal, and right outcome. So
take us. How did all these other businesses join this collection?
Yeah,
and how did you manage it all?
Yeah, so from that, it was basically because the telco was primarily, as I said, we consider it a sales and marketing company. We had that engine. We've got web designers in house now and copywriters and all that sort of stuff in house to do all that sort of stuff. Because that's the primary focus of the business. That where we are, this is going to sound really strange, but the finger food company is 2 doors from our office. So we just got to know the old owner of the business because we shared a car park and just kind of got chatting with him at various stages. And he was sort of saying, "Oh, we're struggling getting business, blah blah blah." It's like, well, our skill set is marketing and traffic generation and conversion. We don't know finger food. We know how to make the phone ring for any business. So we kind of became involved in that business purely as a way as helping that business generate traffic. And then over time, obviously, got to the point where we decided to buy the business because there was better ROI to sort of, because the product itself, be it finger food, but the product realistically is obviously the cooking of the food, the delivery, the serving of the food. It's not just the food itself. The product in my mind is the actual delivery. Is it catering? Yeah. So it's everything beyond just the physical food. So the product in that definition of it takes care of itself to a certain extent. So we came to the conclusion that it's better of us owning that business because the product was relatively mechanical and taking care of itself. So we had more ROI by owning the whole business and still focusing on the sales and marketing. So that's how that business came about, because to me, which is kind of what I alluded to at the start of the call, is that finger food is the same business as phone systems to me. I don't know how to use a deep fryer. I don't know how to install a phone system. But I know how to make the phone ring, and I know how to convert those people when they ring into buyers. And then I have employees and team members whose sole focus is to make sure the product's really, really good. Be it an installation of a phone system or the catering of a 40th birthday party. And then the outdoor store is 2 doors the other side of the building. So it's basically buying up the whole block.
So if you want to get bought up by Pete, just open a business near you and you're good to go.
Exactly. There's an IT computer company that opened up downstairs last week, so we'll put that on the clock and see how long that takes. But the outdoor store was a retail store, worked at a retail outdoor store for quite a while and knew the product exceptionally well. The old owner of that business at a different location wasn't successful. He thought he'd have a crack at running a business. And this is, I think, a downfall for so many people that, and this is what I talk about quite a bit, where you look at someone who does an apprenticeship. They become a plumber or a sparky or a builder. They do an apprenticeship and know the tools. They know the product. They know how to build a house and how to, plumb a house, whatever it might be. And they do their apprenticeship and then suddenly think they know how to run a business. And they go out on their own and then aren't successful. Because your apprenticeship doesn't teach you how to actually run a business. It teaches you how to do the mechanics. And the issue that we saw with the retail store was that the guy who went from being an employee at the store that failed to going, oh, look, I know the product. I know outdoor stuff really, really well. And he knows. He loves the product. He knows rock climbing. He knows hiking. He knows all that sort of stuff exceptionally well. And he started the business and then realised that it's not about the product. He realised that, oh, hang on, I've got to actually drive traffic into my store. People have to be able to walk into the store here or come to my website. And that's not his skill set. So again, over conversations with him in the car park, we kind of realised that he knows his product but doesn't know the marketing. And that was a big problem for his business. And I think so many business owners face this, that they know their product really, really well, but they don't know how to market it. So we came in and said, well, hang on, we know sales and marketing. We don't know outdoor, but you do. So let's partner up together. So that's a partnership arrangement at the moment where we've rebuilt the website completely from scratch. We're driving new traffic to his store and obviously online. And he's worrying about the product, dealing with the clients and fulfilling their needs and helping them out really, really well. And we're just, churning traffic at the website and at the actual retail store. So that's how that business came about. Because, again, to me, that's why I consider the outdoor store, the finger food catering company and the telco stuff and the e-commerce stuff that we do as well, all being fundamentally the same business because it's not about the product.
Now, I know you're going to keep adding to this list of companies, Pete. You still haven't touched on the online e-commerce yet.
Yep.
But before you do that, and maybe It sounds like these situations are kind of similar in the sense that you see a company that could benefit from your marketing acumen, and then eventually you help them and potentially buy them out. On a personal level, how is your day-to-day life changing with this? Because are you is this like a portfolio and you get more added each day? Because to me, this sounds like there's okay. I'm sure these companies have lots of people working for them and they do all the main jobs, but you still have to think about these companies.
Oh, absolutely.
And talk about them and have meetings with your partners and look at numbers and how things are going and what are you going to do next. Does it not compound a bit, and are you not getting a bit overworked and stressed from the different variables to think about here?
No, look, not really, because to the point where we've been involved in finger food for a couple of years now, and we've only been involved in outdoor for about 6 months. So the telco business was fundamentally running itself to a certain extent, where I was very much working on the business, not in it. And as soon as I got to that point where I kind of not had free time per se, but I was like, okay, I'm not working in the business too much. We have the ability from a board perspective, so to speak, to go, okay, we can parlay something new onto this. So that's when the finger food company came along, really. So it wasn't really an additional time. It was just a shift of movement, because obviously at that point I could have gone, or we could have gone, my business partners and I gone, look, let's not take anything new on. Let's just actually work less hours and have more of a lifestyle. But the choice we made at the time was, no, let's not do that. Let's grow the empire, for want of a better term, or grow the portfolio. Is probably a better way of putting it. And rather than investing that time in sunshine and lollipops and rainbows, let's actually grab another business. And that's where finger food came on. And then again, that conversation was had 6 months ago.
I think another business might be your sunshine and lollipops.
Yeah,
and rainbows,
look,
Pete. So
I think I think really now is with the baby coming along in 3 months' time or 4 months' time, there won't be many more. I can't see anything popping onto the radar, because you're right. At that point, these three businesses are going to be very much sort of, I'll say board meeting requirements, but I'm involved a lot more than just board meetings, of course, like on a daily basis. But I should be able to go back to the plan is next year is 1 day a week involved in the finger food, 1 day a week in the outdoor, 1 day a week in the telco, and then 2 days a week of baby time. That's kind of what I'm working towards for January.
Okay, now that opens up a question. Then you've obviously managed to set these companies up or take them over, and they function without you well.
Yep.
Can you, and obviously it's way beyond the 5 minutes you get to answer this question, but looking at that, is there one thing you could tell us that is the most important ingredient to make that work so you can step aside in your experience with these companies? 2
great business partners.
Right. So what do they do?
Same as me. In terms of the same 2 guys I started the telco with, we're in the outdoor together. We're in finger food, so we can kind of share responsibilities. We're all kind of, it's definitely had its pluses, and don't get me wrong, it's definitely had its cons. Is we're very, very similar, which has been problems at times. We all focus on the same thing, and no one's kind of looking at the other thing about the business, which kind of had testing moments. But when it comes to sort of the way we've learned to work together and structure the business, it's all sales and marketing. We all kind of know the same stuff. Now I'm probably more au fait at the marketing than they are, but they're more au fait at the sales and conversion than I am. So there is obviously a lot of crossover. So that means, and we all kind of think the same after 8 years. So from that perspective, if I'm away one day and decisions need to be made, they can make them, and I know they'll make the right decisions, which has been really helpful.
Though, like good people at hiring, for example, to get operations managers.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to give you advice, but I still don't have that right. And like transparent, I don't think we've got it completely right yet. I think we've got some amazing staff. I think our marketing team I wouldn't change for a heartbeat. Our accounts team is pretty good. We went through some real headaches a couple of years ago with the accounting team. I think from an operations perspective, we're getting better. I think there's probably a couple of roles we could probably fill to make it better. Not change, but add some other people to the team to sort of take some of the operational stuff across. And I'd love to be able to sit up here and say, look, I know it all. I know the secrets to that, but I don't. I'll talk marketing and traffic generation and conversion with confidence and congruency all day long. But, I can talk for an hour and a half about the lessons I've learned from, operations, but I am far from an expert on that, because that has been our biggest downfall.
But you're relaxed enough to spend an hour today talking to me about your businesses, so things are not exploding around you.
My today's been, I get up early, like I'm a morning person. I was up at 5. I had a conference call for an hour and a half this morning with the US for a project I'm working on. Then I was, that was from 6:30 to 7:30, and then from 7:30 to 9ish or so this morning, I was in the office. Well, I've been in the office all day today, talking to the telco staff about some marketing stuff, and also talking to the web design team about the outdoor retail site that just went live the other week. Then I jumped onto a 3-hour Q&A. Actually, it was probably a 2-hour Q&A call today, actually, with some consulting clients that I do a group consulting things. We had a 2-hour Q&A call. Then I was back out of my office into just talking to people in the accounts team for about half an hour about some stuff. Then I'm on this call with you for an hour, and then the rest of the afternoon will be on just in the telco office, just annoying people and being a seagull, just flying in, crapping on everything, and then leaving. So that's sort of my Friday. So I get to mix up a little bit. But I think what it is that I'm really anal with my time. I try to be. So when I'm doing something like this is the outcome for my next 25 minutes, I'm going to get that outcome and move on. I think, from a productivity perspective, I think everyone really, if you look at the stuff, if you look at your 8-hour day and really broke down how many things were actually, like how many 10-minute blocks were actually productive, you'd actually find most people only spend probably 2 hours out of 8 hours being productive. Whereas I think I kind of get more out of my time than most people, because if I break my day down into 25-minute blocks, and I'm in bed at 9 o'clock at night because I'm absolutely exhausted because I work so hard. Being up at 5 changes that, but I'm in bed 9:30. Because I just go flat out all day. So when I'm on, I'm on. When I'm off, I'm off.
Now, you have a phrase you call for those 25-minute blocks, don't you?
Yeah, it's to me, it's critical focus time or core focus time. Now, critical focus time is a term that Ed Dale, which you mentioned earlier, sort of coined a couple of years ago. And we were talking about it when we were hanging out with Frank Kerner, an internet marketer in Florida, doing some stuff a couple of years ago. And I kind of went, yeah, that's basically a great way of putting it in terms of this is critical focus. I know exactly what my outcome is for this 25 minutes. I'm critically focused on this one thing. And I've kind of adapted that over a period of time to now refer to it as core focus time. Because realistically, if you look at most entrepreneurs or business owners, there's 2 types of tasks they do. They do core tasks and they do mechanical tasks. And, to look at from an internet marketing perspective, a good example I often give from an internet marketing perspective to look at it is, as an internet marketer, you create videos, whether it's videos for your membership site or videos for traffic generation on YouTube, whatever it might be. And if you break down the process of creating a video and look at the steps, you generally plan out what the video is going to be. You obviously have to record your voice because you're the person who's giving the education or the lesson or the training. You have to obviously get the slides created that's going to work. You have to pick the transitions and the fonts and the images, and you have to upload it to YouTube. So most internet marketers, when they look at their business, they go, oh, look, I have to create a video for my business. I have to do the video, all those steps I spoke about. But if you really break it down, as an internet marketer, as you, Yara, or anyone listening, what is the core elements of that particular process that only you can do? Realistically, it's the planning of the particular piece of content, mapping out what you're going to talk about, and then you actually delivering the voice and the message of that video. That's the core elements. The picking of the transition of the slides, the picking of the fonts, the uploading it to YouTube, that kind of stuff is just mechanical. You personally add no value to that. So I've really taken that approach to my real world businesses, and now sort of helping internet marketers apply this same methodology to their business. And that, well, look at video creation. All you really need to do is the core elements. If you just did a mind map and then recorded an audio file of you talking through that mind map, which becomes the core element, you can have someone else create the slides to match that mind map and what you spoke about. And it will be just as high quality, if not more high quality, than you were actually doing it yourself. Because the transitions don't matter. Think about a video you watched in the last 2 weeks that was awesome in terms of educational value, and you bullet pointed down the 7 takeaways that you can still remember for that video. If I asked you to bullet point down what transitions they used, what color slides they were, what graphics they were, and what font face the video was, you wouldn't remember that stuff because it's completely irrelevant. It's important for the video to be there, but it's irrelevant because there's no value added. So that's mechanical sort of stuff. So I very much break up my day, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's sort of online marketing stuff or business stuff, is that core focus time. I'll spend 25 minutes to do like a 5-minute mind map of a piece of content. Then I'll record an audio of me speaking for 20 minutes over that mind map. And then my team will go off and create the slides and the transitions and render the video to get it to that audio and then submit it to YouTube. So that 2-hour process of creating a video that most people spend doing, I do it in 25 minutes because I only worry about the core focus element.
Now that opens up a question. Now this is something I've noticed about you, Pete. You seem to have 2 worlds going, where you've got these businesses which are they're bricks and mortar. You've got
The real world,
offices,
yeah.
you've got staff, you go in and you, like you said, you're the CEO and you tell people and have meetings and talk to people and things get done. And then you step into the online marketing world and you've connected with a lot of people. You just mentioned Frank Kern before,
Yep.
Obviously Ed Dale being a fellow
buddy
Melbourneite.
of mine, yep.
And you're about to do a project with Rich Sheffrin. I'd love to hear how you met him.
Yeah.
And then you obviously come to live events and you talk about online marketing, but I'm pretty sure some of the consulting you did was probably a bit more, I guess bricks and mortar, maybe applying online marketing to bricks and mortar companies.
Yep.
And as part of your online, what you do there, you've built an outsourcing team. It sounds like it's a core component of what you do. And it's almost like another company in itself. Everything that happens is repeat.
Yeah.
Right? Now,
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
how have you done that and why is that something that's important to you?
Yeah, good question. From that perspective, look, I guess, as I sort of said, the telco business was built on internet marketing. If you really break it down and look at it, just because we sold phone systems in the real world, all our lead generation and marketing was online. So, 8 years ago, well, even 12 years ago, whenever it was that I was, designing websites and stuff, I've always sort of been intrigued with the internet as a way to generate traffic. So I was going to internet marketing events and have been for years to learn internet marketing techniques to apply it to a real world business. And I can rant all day about this because I think so many people look at their online business as this completely different world, but success principles, business principles apply online as they do offline. Just because it's easier to send and it's cheaper to send an email doesn't mean you should send it more often than you would have if you did direct marketing, because the same principles of oversaturation with a direct mail piece applies with email. Just because it's free, you shouldn't change the laws. And I think so many people do that. They think it's a different world. But I kind of came at it was like, well, internet marketing is a way to generate traffic. The internet is not a different business model. You're still running a business. It's just a different path to market. So I just applied that path to market for my real world business. So that's sort of, I was applying all these AdWords strategies and SEO strategies and opt-in pages and conversion strategies to my real world companies. And, going to internet marketing events and speaking to people at those sort of events about what I was doing and how I was applying it, kind of, got to the point where people were asking me to speak and kind of share this philosophy that, an internet business, there's no such thing as an internet business. That it's complete fallacy. Unless you sell the internet, that is not an internet business. You are in the business of marketing your products, currently using your only path to market as the internet. And that's really what internet marketing is. If you really break it down, it's a business which has one path to market, and that path to market is the internet. So when you have that mindset shift, it really opens up the success, because you go, oh yeah, I'm running a business. Business success principles are universal. Okay, I'll apply this to everything I'm doing. So I started speaking at events, at internet marketing events, with that sort of philosophy and that kind of message, and talking about how to actually apply business principles to your online marketing, because I was kind of applying marketing principles to a real business, and I started then teaching internet marketers how to apply business principles to their little online website that they weren't considering a business. And that's sort of how that kind of transition became. And then consulting with these sort of people who are like, oh yeah, okay, I've got to treat my website like a business, and that's where their businesses actually take off.
And you built a team then to help you do all this.
Yeah, exactly. Like we outsource. Like I've got a whole bunch of Philippine staff that actually work for our real world business, applying internet marketing principles. We've got some of our accounts team based in the Philippines, because again, if you look at it, the actual process of inputting a accounts payable invoice into our accounting system doesn't need to be done by someone in Australia. They're all emailed from our suppliers and manufacturers, so they can go to someone in the Philippines to enter via a remote desktop into our company. So we've got a whole bunch of web developers overseas. We've got accounts people overseas. We don't have any customer service overseas, because obviously we want to be different and add value and have an Australian person answering a phone in the telco space. It's an interesting theory that no one else seems to apply. But so I've applied those outsourcing principles to my real world business, because it's like, well, it's just a business. If it applies for an internet marketer, quote unquote, it'll apply for a real world business. So then obviously off the back of that, I went, well, if I'm going to start speaking more and consulting and doing videos of my own and blogs and stuff like that, I built up my own outsourcing team in the Philippines to help me with that. So if I want to create a video about a particular lesson that I think is not being communicated well enough or taught properly in the internet marketing space, I'll create this little audio file like I explained, and then have someone overseas create the videos to match and then syndicate it online, because the mechanics can be done by anybody, anywhere in the world.
Has it been a long process getting this team around you? Is it like hiring in the real world?
Look, well, this is the thing. I think, to me, that, again, this is something that I talk about quite a bit, is that again, the way people hire online when they're going to hire an outsourcer, they think that the rules change, but I go through the exact same process as if I was hiring someone for, to work in the office here in St Kilda, Melbourne. I'd, put job ads up and we'll get people to apply and we'll go through a stringent interview process. And it has taken a while because when I first started, hiring people, I kind of took this approach that everyone was talking about in internet marketing, that it should be different and just go and hire someone and then worry about it afterwards. So I was hiring people on Odesk and then kind of realised that actually doesn't work. And I'm sure you've experienced this and your listeners have too, that the traditional ways that you hire people in the internet marketing world, quote unquote, don't seem to actually be sustainable. So then I sort of thought, well, hang on, if I know that business is business, why don't I actually approach hiring the exact same way that I approach it internally here? And, I get a lot of our overseas staff now off JobStreet, which is a Philippines version of Seek.com.au or Monster, like a normal recruitment company. So if you were going for a job in the Philippines locally, they'd go to a place like JobStreet. So that's where we hire. So that's where we put the job ads up, and that's where we hire. We go through the exact same process as if we were hiring someone here, and it's been a huge success. We get better quality people, better retention, A players, and it has been a bit of a process, and that's sort of some of the stuff I've been sharing as well when I sort of speak at events and stuff.
Interesting. So how did all this lead to connecting with Rich Efron?
Well, basically, I was speaking at a marketing event in London about 18 months ago, one of Ed Dale's events, and I was speaking on sort of this, offline, online business kind of philosophy that I kind of just touched on then. And Ed and I were having breakfast one morning, and he was just sort of asking the same sort of questions that you were, that how the heck do you manage all these businesses? And I kind of sort of started talking about this core versus mechanics philosophy and how I only work on the core elements of a particular task and then have, processes and systems in place to have all this other stuff done. And Ed was like, whoa, that's the stuff you have to be sharing. That's the stuff that's going to really engage people and wow them. So okay. To me, it was just second nature and didn't really think of any value of it. So Ed had an event a few months later in Melbourne. So I spoke at that event, and literally I stood on stage for 90 minutes with my laptop and did my work. I didn't teach anything. I just went, hey guys, I've got 90 minutes to share with you. I'm going to actually just do my work and you can watch me do it. And it sounds very strange, but it was a 3-day event with speakers from all over the world, and I was the only person who got a standing ovation. I literally stood on stage and showed how I hack my email. I showed how I actually do forum posting. To give you a really quick example, the way I do forum posting in certain forums I need to be involved with from the telco and internet marketing kind of stuff is, it's this core versus mechanics. I have a list of forums that I want to be proactive in every day. And I have a team member in the Philippines who know the topics that I'm comfortable talking about and I feel congruent talking about and I feel, correct in talking about. Like I wouldn't talk about how to, manage operations or anything like that because that's not my ideal skill set. I can give some advice, but I'd rather talk about marketing. So she goes through these forums every day for me and picks out the 4 or 5 threads that she thinks I could add value to with my opinions. So then she sends me those emails, those 4 or 5 threads. I jump into only those 4 or 5 threads, read the question that's being asked, record an audio response of what my response is to those particular threads, email that back to her. She then transcribes it and posts it in the thread on my behalf. Because the only core value I actually add in that forum posting process is my answer to the question. There's no real value. It's mechanical. I don't add any value when I am spending an hour trawling through that forum for 3 threads to actually find and see someone rant about something completely irrelevant and then get distracted and end up on Facebook or YouTube watching cats play piano. That's how I do forum posting. That's how I'm proactive in forums on a regular basis because my team cut out all the noise and just give me what I need to worry about. I add some great value content in an audio file. She then transcribes it, takes out the ums and posts them on my behalf. So I kind of did a whole bunch, like 90 minutes of workflows like that, did some forum posting, replied to some email, trained a staff member, created a video, a whole bunch of stuff. And people went ape over it. I was blown away. They went absolutely nuts over it, which is really cool and very, very humbling and stuff like that. And that kind of video got shared amongst kind of the inner circle, so to speak, between Ed's friends and Rich saw it. And I think, Rich, and I'm sure a lot of your readers and listeners know Rich as well, that he's kind of very much that way as well. You've seen his reading process where he does sort of the speed reading stuff on the Oxygen.
Yep.
It's insane. So he kind of saw my video and went, there's definitely a correlation here. So he tracked me down, tracked down my PA, got a hold of me and said, look, we should really expand this 90-minute presentation into an actual product. And I went, all right, let's check my calendars. And it took about 12 months for me to actually get enough time in my calendar to actually make it happen. So in June this year, I flew over and spent about 3 weeks with Rich's team and sort of helped him implement all these sort of, hacks and workflow and core and mechanic processes into his own business, which has seen huge results. And then
before you keep going, Pete, I'm really curious what Rich's company applied that like really was like a big change for them from what you taught.
Sure. A big thing was that what they were doing with a lot of their content, beyond just the core versus mechanics, there's a whole bunch of I leverage everything because I don't have much time. I don't have enough time to do a new blog post every single day, for example. So I leverage everything I do. So if I do a podcast, for example, or like a half-hour podcast episode, I'll not only use that podcast.
Like the one we're doing right now, for example.
Exactly. So what I suggested to Rich was doing, he does Q&As every single week. So what I suggested to him is, he does those Q&As for his clients, and then that's it. Sits on the phone for 3 hours, answers all these questions, then walks away from that content. And I was like, hang on. You've just created some massive core value right there. So why don't you take that audio? You've answered 15 questions in that 3 hours. Take that audio, have it transcribed, and then have that transcription cleaned up so it's a standalone article that you can post on your blog without him actually having to do any work himself, because he's already done the core value there. So his team take the transcription and clean it up. Then that also can be reworded. Still the same core message that he's created, but someone else can ghostwrite or edit that so it's unique content with his message, his voice, that can be an article in Success Magazine, offline traffic. He could then have that audio taken and have someone create a video about it, and that video can then be posted on YouTube to drive traffic back to his sales page for the product that incorporates those Q&A questions. So it's all about leveraging his input. So he's done one input, how to leverage that. So this podcast, for example, if you wanted to, you could take this and have a video created to match. You can get some images off my website and have a team member create a video so you have a video version of this podcast. You could then hire somebody, a writer, to actually take the transcription of this interview and write, hypothetically, a review article or a profile piece about Pete Williams written by Yaro Starak. And that could be an article that you could submit to a business magazine and say, so the article's about me, which would be great, but you become a journalist and a reporter for offline magazines that can drive traffic back to your website. Positions you as an expert, and that's a great article you could write. So that's sort of the way you could leverage it, because this particular conversation we're having right now takes an hour and produces some massive core value that you could leverage a whole different ways with videos and articles and things like that. So that's the kind of stuff that I was helping his team work on, of how to sort of put some of these processes in place and look at everything they're doing and where was the core value they were creating and where were they not leveraging that core value. Or where was mechanical stuff that Rich was doing, or certain things that his team were doing that could have actually been outsourced. So there was, his team that were doing a bunch of processes where they were doing, core value things, but they're also doing mechanical things as well. Like, for example, the person who created the video would then also spend an hour creating a video, but then spend 20 minutes uploading it to YouTube, Dailymotion, blah, 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 blah. But we put in processes in place where they use software or outsource Filipino people at much cheaper rates than what Rich was paying these high-end staffers to do the mechanical stuff that, it's all about just continually breaking down core versus mechanics, core versus mechanics, core versus mechanics, and getting the mechanical stuff off that person's desk to a lower paid price point person that overall makes the business more profitable.
Which is now come to be known as?
Profit hacks. So after spending time with Rich, while we were there, we were kind of putting this product together, and we did a 6-hour live stream for his clients. For his client list, while I was there helping his team, we did this live stream where I kind of did a 6-hour version of that 90-minute presentation and did a whole bunch of work. And we had quite a few hundred people on the webinar, and we made an offer saying, hey guys, we're rolling out this product we're going to call Profit Hack. We're going to build it that covers a whole bunch of courses, and it's now 100 videos. This product's got 100 different workflow hacks and processes and swipe and deploy resources and stuff. So we got a 51% conversion rate off the webinar. It was insane. People just loved it. They saw that, went, holy wow. And 51% of people on the webinar or the live stream bought, which blew me away. And then so over the last sort of few months, we've been working with them to actually build the product out, refine it, get their feedback. And as I said, 100 videos, heaps of blueprints, swipe and deploy job ads and job descriptions. And literally, if you want someone to take a transcript and turn it into an article that can be in a magazine, you have the job ad to run on eDesk or Olance or something or Elance or Odesk. Then you've actually got the the job description you can take and say, here's a job description, take this audio file, transcribe it, and do this with it. And it's all there, swipe and deploy. So we did that. And then now we're taking it to market to the general public, so to speak, through affiliates and things like that, which is super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I find that I kind of like think of this as almost like outsourcing on steroids, in the sense that you really have drilled it down. I love that phrase, core versus mechanics. That's a great way of conceptualizing what you're doing there. And there's so much you can do. And I think, and I'm thinking about this for my own purposes right now. I've got tons of blog content. I've got 70, 80 podcasts, videos. There's like 4 books worth of reports and courses and things like that. So there's a huge back catalog. I could go and do everything, get it all repurposed for all different purposes.
Exactly. And that's sorry.
And the reason, like, as I think about this, I kind of go, okay, well, what I'm missing now is the people to do that. Yeah. And there's obviously a hiring process to go through. Now, Profit Hacks is a course that you guys have created, and like you said before, you've been selling internally to richest people, and you're just about to go public. Depending on when you're listening to this, it may already be public. Pete was saying this could be the first time he's talked about Profit Hacks publicly, or maybe not. It depends when you listen to this interview. I'm really excited about it, and I'm also wary, though, because I've been excited about outsourcing concepts before, and I just seem to have trouble getting things rolling.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, in terms of outsourcing, to give you some context as well, like, to me, only about 20% of the courses on outsourcing. Like, I did a workshop a while ago here in Australia with some of the leading marketers in Australia. You know, a lot of James Schramko's in the team came along. Some of Ed Dale's team came along. A bunch of friends of yours and I were there as well, sort of sharing what I did as a sort of private workshop. And it was an 8-hour workshop. So that entire 8 hours is inside the program. But beyond just that, we've got like, it's basically 5 or 6 sort of core things that the product talks about. And it's all about leverage to me. So there's things in there about just thinking about, taking these reports and selling them on Kindle for $2. It might not make you like millionaire, but it might make you a couple $100 a year that's sitting there doing nothing for you right now. So, and the whole idea of the program is to actually take people where they are right now in their business. So it's not a sequential course like most courses. It's about sort of you dip into it where you need it. So at the very start, you do this triage on your business to work out where you are right now, what assets you have and where you're lacking, whether it's time for consumption. We talk about how to actually read books quicker and how to actually consume videos and audios quicker. So there's a whole bunch of profit hacks on consumption. There's a whole bunch of profit hacks on communication, how to communicate with your team and your clients and your staff more efficiently. How to create content in a whole bunch of different ways. How to actually, you approach people to interview for content for your own website or your blog. And there's scripts for approaching people and email request scripts you can copy and paste, and how to leverage your content and swipe and deploy processes for that. And then there's outsourcing at the end. So if you need to build a team, there's that entire 8-hour workshop with job ads and job descriptions and process maps to actually apply all this sort of stuff.
And okay, great stuff, and obviously way too much to talk about in this interview, and it's obviously only one aspect of what you do, Pete, but it's the current thing you're focusing on.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
I'm excited about it. I'm going through the course right now, so I'm looking forward to implementing some of that. My kind of goal is to do it all in 2013, and hopefully somewhere through that year I can be doing what you do, Pete, in the sense of getting a lot of value out of what I already create. So I'm excited about that. Now, so going forward, obviously you're doing this launch with Rich, and I'll put some links up to go with this podcast once I know what they are exactly. And no doubt that there's a bunch of free training stuff that you and Rich will release as part of the launch. So
we're doing another 6-hour, as part of the launch with all the training videos and stuff, we're doing a 6-hour live stream again. So that's where I'll sort of teach a lot. It'll be 6 hours of me teaching, and people are blown away when I've done that before.
So no doubt if you're interested in that part of what Pete has done, and you can see, I think, listening to your interview, why it's become necessary for you to do this system. I think there's more to it than just having a lot of motivation. There is some good coordination of people going on, and to get the leverage you're getting out of all this. So lots to learn in that area. Pete, we're almost at the end of this interview. So what are you up to in the future, and where is this all taking you?
Yeah, well, good question. So for me, it's sort of, as I said before, baby number one coming along in January, just got married this year, so child on the way straight away, which is super exciting, little baby boy. So thank you, mate. So that's sort of the plan for 2013 for me is dirty nappies. So that's going to be interesting. Got a new book deal. So I have a new book that I've been writing for a while, which is called It's Not About the Product. So I'm sure people kind of get based on what we've spoken about today, the core of that book, what that's all about. It's sort of talking about it's not about the product and it's about the marketing and sales and things like that. So that's sort of the big project for me next year is get that book and, crazy goal, New York Times list kind of goal for the book. And I think we could potentially do it. I'm really proud of how the book's coming along. So that's kind of my two big things for next year is kind of take that lifestyle that you were kind of talking about because the businesses are, at that point now where they don't need me to maintain and I no longer want to take over the world or anything like that, at least for the next sort of 4 or 5 years because I want to sort of have some time for myself and the family and do another Ironman triathlon. And so next year, 2013 is about sort of Pete Williams and actually kind of stepping back a little bit, write a book and enjoy some family life. And then, 2014, who knows what I sort of might want to do at that point.
Yeah, it's a while away yet. So,
yeah.
Okay, for anyone listening to this, Pete, let's wrap it up with a final question. Now, I like to ask this of my people I interview because I think it's often overwhelming when you reach this point in the interview because we've kind of summed up your entire life, at least your business life in an hour. Now, a person listening to this is probably thinking, all right, what I've really learned here about what Pete's coming across with is a couple of things. Obviously, it's about the marketing and the sales, not about the product. That seems to be a big thing with you. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of people, the struggle they're coming against is really right at the beginning with issues of cash flow, issues of, I want to do these profit hacks, but frankly, I'm struggling to even generate my first bit of cash flow to hire people to start doing all this content creation and find the time to create the content, do that core from the mechanics. Could you maybe go back in time and okay, maybe because you're a serial entrepreneur and this is something that's just come naturally to you, I don't know, everyone has trials and tribulations, but let's put yourself into the shoes of someone who is working a job right now, but they're not meant to be a job worker. They're meant to be an entrepreneur, or at least someone who has some form of lifestyle business that's making the equivalent to what their job makes for them. Sure. But they don't have to work the job, so they get that kind of time freedom and lifestyle freedom that they're after. Not necessarily wanting to follow in your footsteps and have 6 companies and teams of Filipinos.
I wouldn't necessarily advise it.
But one website or one business running. But it's just this momentum is such a challenge. Like, how do you find getting this flywheel started? Like, what's the best piece of advice you can give to a newbie, a beginner at this process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not about outsourcing, but I do think it's about core versus mechanics. And I think it's about this, core focus time. So what I've been talking to people about is what I suggest is, you can't outsource the mechanics straight away. You might not have the time or most likely you don't have the resources of cash to do that, which is completely fine. But at least start looking at your diary going, okay, every day I'm going to do something that's core for my business, whatever it might be. And you still have to do the mechanical sides of video creation, hypothetically, as an example. So when you go to sit down and do a video, really break it down and say, okay, right now I'm going to put my little core business owner hat on. I'm going to do the core element of this task. And that's what you might do in the morning before you go to work. Hypothetically, go to work, do your job, get annoyed at the man, come home and then put on your mechanical hat and then do the mechanical side of the business. But make sure you really separate them in the way you actually go about your work because it's really strange. I can't explain it. I'm not a psychologist, but when you actually physically are sitting down doing core stuff and you're very clear this is core and over here I'm doing mechanics, you basically find a way to get the mechanics off your desk because you're very, very clear about this is stuff that I'm adding value to. How can I get rid of this? And without that clarity of connection or differentiation between the two elements, you kind of stumble along. Some people go, I want to outsource something, but they don't know. They try and outsource the whole thing and it falls over. I think everyone's tried to outsource, article writing from scratch and it just isn't your voice and not your language or anything like that. Whereas if you break the two things up, you can see the differences there. So I think that it's a very sort of eclectic kind of answer, or esoteric answer is probably a better word. But I think it is really about doing what you're doing in your business and just making sure that you look at your diary and go, okay, these are the core things I'm doing. These are the mechanical things I'm doing. And over time, just look on a weekly basis and try and increase the amount of core stuff you're doing and decrease the mechanical stuff. Because it's not about necessarily outsourcing the mechanical stuff. It could be as much as using software to quicken or fasten up the mechanical elements, or for a lot of cases, eliminating mechanics. The mechanics element is completely irrelevant in certain circumstances when you start looking at the task you're doing. So having that clear differentiation between the two will actually help you get some clarity, and surprisingly, whatever reason, it just frees people up a lot more and they can move forward a lot quicker.
Right, so an example might be if you're going to drop some mechanical is if you're doing videos, stand in front of a camera, talk it out, and upload it rather than stand in front of a camera, worry about a slide presentation and screen flow, but just
absolutely
just get the content up there. I think the best, analogy or another word I could see using for that core part of it is really what your creative output is, where you're creating something rather than just reproducing or doing, like you said, mechanical roles that only work if there's some sort of creativity in existence to begin with.
Exactly. And just when you're doing that creative work, try and get all the friction out of the way, because friction is another word for mechanics. And so many people, want to do some video hypothetically, but they spend all this time worrying about which microphone to buy and all that sort of stuff. It's like, just get the content out there. Just get the creative juices out there and just reduce the friction as much as you can. You can always go back and fix it if you need to.
All right, Pete, let's wrap it up. Thank you for doing the interview. Where can we send people to? There's obviously a lot of sites for you. Where do you like people to go to find out more about what you do?
Well, to probably get the most overview for me, petewilliams.com.au kind of covers all the craziness that is my life. So that's probably a good place to start. So from there, you can kind of filter everywhere. But obviously, if people are interested in profit hacks, you've got the links on your site and stuff like that, so they can check it out.
Awesome. Okay, Pete, thanks for taking the time to answer the questions and, of course, go through your story. You're still a young man, so there's a good story to continue, I think, with all this. So
hopefully.
Fingers crossed. So, yeah, thanks very much for taking the time, and good luck with everything you do.
I appreciate it, mate. Thank you.
And if anyone is listening to this and you do want to hear more interviews with inspiring and interesting people like Pete, head to my blog, Entrepreneur's Journey, by Googling my name, Yaro, Y-A-R-O, and you'll find my blog there. And then just click the podcast tab if you want to grab interviews. And, of course, if you want to find the links that went along with this one by Pete, you can find that there too. So thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye-bye.